Well, it's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot.
The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing game's been missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, I wanted to kind of take a break from talking about the news, and I wanted to talk about maybe some boxing history for a second, because I was just thinking about this the other day, and you know, boxing is an interesting sport because sometimes today's nobodies are tomorrow's somebodies, you know, and sometimes certain fighters always seem to get the luck of the draw and get the close decisions, and sometimes there's certain fighters that don't seem to get the decisions, and it really changes the course of history and the perception of how we see certain fighters. So in the latter case, you know, as far as fighters that were on the wrong side of decisions and really had things gone their way with certain fights, they may have had a much different career. That's what I wanted to talk about in this particular video. I wanted to talk about one particular fighter that, you know, like, I'm gonna say it was like 8 years ago, 2014. Fighter by the name of Mauricio Herrera. For those of you who really know your boxing, you guys may remember Mauricio Herrera. Crafty fighter, not the hardest hitter in the world, but very awkward, hard guy to look good against. Accurate guy. Nothing really stood out about Herrera as far as power or speed or athleticism or anything like that, but he knew his way around the ring, and he knew when things got hot in there, when things got tough, he knew how to behave like a fighter. And sometimes qualities like that often get understated in boxing. You know, a lot of people always get enamored with like the hand speed of a Duran Ennis or the punching power of a Deontay Wilder or a Virgil Ortiz or the body punching of a Emmanuel Navarrete. But sometimes the subtle skills, the things that matter, like behaving like a fighter, go a long way. And I think he was one of those guys where it really helped. Now, in 2014, let there be no mistakes, let there be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In 2014, despite the fact that on paper he never got a decision, in 2014, Mauricio Herrera should have been the fighter of the year. And you might say, BT, how on God's green earth should Mauricio Herrera or any fighter, how could any fighter have been fighter of the year when they didn't even record a singular victory in during that year? I'm gonna explain to you why he should have been fighter of the year. So 2014, oh, what a time to be alive. I was 19 years old in 2019, so shit was crazy back then. But anyway, Mauricio Herrera was brought in, the first fight in 2019, he was brought in to lose. Now, you guys may remember, this was back in the day when Danny Garcia was a legitimate champion, when Danny Garcia was looked at to be a massive star in boxing. And he had just come off some good wins. I think he had just beaten, I can't remember if it was Khan or Matisse, but it was one of those big wins. I want to say it was one of those big wins that he just had, one of his big wins. The fight before that, or maybe within 2 fights of that. And so the boxing industry and the powers that be were trying to capitalize off Danny Garcia, and they brought him to Puerto Rico. They brought Danny Garcia to Puerto Rico to try and build him into the next Puerto Rican star, so to speak. So he had his own little homecoming in Puerto Rico, and they brought in the light punching Mauricio Herrera to face Danny Garcia. And it didn't go as Danny Garcia and his handlers would have liked. You know, it was a fight where Herrera was crowding Danny. Herrera was smothering a lot of the shots. He didn't allow Danny to time him, which is very important when we talk about Danny Garcia, because Danny Garcia is a counterpuncher. Mauricio Herrera can be a counterpuncher too, but he has no problems getting in there and getting physical and being rugged. And, you know, to many people's surprise, because he was supposed to be just a nice, solid, warm body for Danny Garcia to get out of there and build into a star. Mauricio Herrera outboxed Danny Garcia. He outfoxed Danny Garcia. He outthought Danny Garcia, and he beat Danny Garcia to a bloody pulp. Danny Garcia's face was bleeding. Mauricio Herrera really gave a great account of himself that night, and almost everybody thought Herrera should have beat Danny Garcia. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, that was the first robbery of that year. Herrera was on the wrong side of the decision, and you know, Danny Garcia got the win, and he became the star he became in boxing, breaking ticket records at the Barclays Center and things like that. But, you know, Danny Garcia's reputation and his star power was diminished. He's really never been the same since that night. If you think about Danny Garcia's career and how it's played out, since the Herrera fight, he's never reached the heights that he reached before the Herrera fight, because all the best moments of his career were pre-Herrera, like Matisse and Khan. Everything after Herrera, you know, it's just it's cool, solid, nothing crazy. But yeah, Herrera should have won that fight, and that really should have been a win that took him to another level in boxing. But they didn't. The powers that be didn't really want that for Herrera, so he loses that fight to Garcia. Then to close out the year, they bring Herrera in to fight at the time undefeated prospect, you know, Jose Benavidez Jr. Now, a lot of boxing fans now that, you know, just started watching boxing, they may only know Jose Benavidez Jr. for the fight with Terrence Crawford, where he got Terrence Crawford all the way to the 12th round, and he, you know, the fight wasn't close, but, you know, it was harder than most of Crawford's recent fights. You know, he got into the 12th round, and Crawford landed the big uppercut and eventually stopped him. But at one point in time, Benavidez was a highly touted amateur, you know, a top prospect, Top Rank had some big plans for Benavidez. And it was the same situation. They brought Herrera in because on paper he looked safe as an opponent. Not a lot of knockout power, a nice, safe, solid, warm body. And it was the same thing. Herrera going in there, being the awkward fighter he is, disrupting the timing of his opponents, outboxing Benavidez, making him very uncomfortable, landing shots to the body when he did crowd him. You know, it was another fight where Herrera boxed a really good performance against an undefeated prospect. And what happened? He didn't get the decision. You know, I think he lost. I'm pretty sure he lost, or he got a draw, but he didn't get a win, and he deserved to win. So we're talking about Herrera, who in 2014 should have had a win over Danny Garcia, who at the time, you know, was the unified champion at 140, doing big things in the 140-pound division and looking like one of the biggest stars in boxing. I mean, that was the time when Danny Garcia was being rumored to fight Floyd Mayweather. There were actually pockets of time where Danny Garcia was linked to fighting Floyd Mayweather. So that win would have did wonders for the career of Herrera, and they didn't give it to him. And then to rob him against the undefeated Benavidez Jr., you know, that was just like the nail in the coffin. So instead of, you know, getting what he should have got owed to him, which was, you know, two very well-deserved victories and a chance to push his career forward, Mauricio Herrera didn't get that. He should have really been fighter of the year. I had him as fighter of the year that year because he deserved it. But boxing, it's not always about who wins the fight. Sometimes it's about who wins the battle in the negotiation room, and that's who determines who wins the fights. But I wanted to kind of go down memory lane and talk about Herrera because, you know, these fighters get forgotten about quickly. And I wanted to just put this out there to never forget that, because I never really documented it here on the channel. So I figured, you know what? I wanted to take a break and just kind of talk about that for a little bit. So if you guys remember that time with the Danny Garcia, Mauricio Herrera fights, and the Mauricio Herrera versus Jose Benavidez Jr. fights, give me your comments down below. What do you remember about those fights? And what do you think Herrera's real record was in 2014? Was he wrong to get the 2 losses on his record that year? Should he have gotten the 2 wins, or do you think maybe it was 1-1? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care. Thank you for watching another video on True School Sports, the home of boxing. If you made it this far, do me a favor and do yourself a damn favor. Hit that subscribe button and surely you will not be disappointed. You know, True School Sports bringing you the latest and greatest, the untouchable, you know, boxing content, interviews, news videos, breakdowns, live fight reaction extravaganza. We've got a great community of people here, boxing fans all over the world, from America to the UK to Australia, and on and on and on. So join the empire today. Hit that subscribe button. Take care and God bless.